Welcome, my name is Edwin Patterson. Today you're going to see an amazing thing out of the Book of Mormon. We have a discussion going on. Did Joseph write the Book of Mormon, create the Book of Mormon, or did it come from God? From Alma 45 to Alma 62, you are going to see an amazing thought process go on. Now, those chapters are called the war chapters, and in the war chapters, one of two things happened. Joseph Smith was so intelligent about war that he wrote a very comprehensive master plan for both the Lamanites and the Nephites, including national policy, national strategies, and then the tactics to back those all up, all in those chapters. Now, the number of pages involved is 45. It would have taken Joseph 4 to 5 days to complete that. If he's writing it himself, he must have been very, very nimble, because what you see is a lot of detail. Sometimes you get bogged down in the wars. It's the wars. But the complexity and the beauty is that you're going to see a man emerge, Captain Moroni, who's going to lay out how the Nephites thought about war. Contrary to that, you will see the Lamanites. The same thing. They had national policy of how they're going to deal with the Nephites in war. And then strategies and tactics beyond that. There are over 100 of these that come out as you read through and just take the notes. That's what I did. So no special thing, but what you discover is there's complexity to this. Could he have come up with all of that in 5 days as he's translating? Well, let's find out what they are. Here's the first. So we're going to talk about the Nephites first and their national policy. They had 4. The military leaders must be men of God. That's kind of cool. That's a national policy. That's the way it played out. If they were not good men, they're not going to lead. Secondly, they will fight defensively, but not offensively. That's a very big statement. Again, Joseph just came up with that in 4 or 5 days. That's pretty obtuse. Third, they will provide a standing army for the civilians to be protected. So they always had an army. Everyone didn't go back to growing stuff or hunting or whatever. They had a standing army. And number 4, they will reinforce the cities to provide safety for the citizens. So that's national policy. We're going to do that every time. That's what we want. That defines us. Now the Lamanites are different. So let's look at their national policy. They have 3. Number 1, and it is number 1 with these guys. Nephites are bad people who deserve to be punished and die for insulting and abusing the original Lamanites, were Laman and Lemuel. They carried that through the whole Book of Mormon. That just kept them ticked off. Number 2, Lamanite armies will attack Nephites whenever it looks advantageous. That's a button. So if we can see a crack in the armor out there, they got little problems going on, whatever it is, we attack. That's okay, but not until we see it's advantageous. And last, ex-Nephites are better commanders than the Lamanites. So we will use that in our strategies and tactics. Now again, I'm going to read some very complex things here. I'm going to give an example of what I mean by this. And think, could Joseph have come up with in 4 or 5 days? Now, he never saw a war. The War of 1812, he was 7 years old. He was in Vermont, and he wasn't touched by that. There are no other wars for him to experience. And yet he's coming up, if he wrote this out of his own mind, he's coming up with extremely detailed thoughts about Lamanite and Nephite national policy, their strategies to accomplish those policies, and the tactics to satisfy the strategies. Let's go through an example, see what you think. So I'm going to use the last one of the Nephites. Will provide reinforced cities to provide safety for their citizens. Okay, so what does that mean? So we go down to the strategies. Well, first of all, they rely on the prophets for guidance. So we know Lamanites are coming. We have a town surrounded by walls of some type. Never says stone walls in the Book of Mormon. So we presume wood, but don't know. Prophet, what should we do to protect ourselves? So that's a strategy. Go to the prophet to find out. Secondly, they fortify all towns against the Lamanites. So they're very consistent in this. This is something that's a big deal, and it's a strategy they're going to incorporate. Now, the tactics. I have in my examples 10, but again, there are over 100 for both the Lamanites and the Nephites. So, first tactic. They'd create berms of earth, push them up against the walls of each town. So it would make it harder to get up to the top of the walls. Secondly, they burned walls by digging trenches in front of the walls. So you have a wall, you have burned earth, and a trench down below. Much harder to get up to the top. Number 3, they used the Lamanite prisoners to dig the trenches. So they had a process. And if they weren't available, they'd dig them. But if the Lamanites were there in prison form, they would be the ones who would dig those trenches. Next, from the top of the berms, they had large stones and many arrows to cast down at the invaders. This is in Alma 49:19. So you're going to come up, we're going to be throwing rocks down at you and arrows down at you. Now, I'm guessing, I don't really know, you have a trench burned uphill. So is that 20, 25 feet? I don't know, but definitely on top, they're ready for them. And it goes even further than that. So they burned the whole town except for the entrance. That's the only way the Lamanites can get in, unless they're going to go up over the top. And part of the tactic was they put their strongest and their best armed men at the entrances. Makes sense? And that's in 49:20. They built works of timber on top of the dirt walls, which are strong and high. That's 50, verse 3. So berm, wall, here's the dirt. They build another wall on top of that. So now we're 30, 35 feet up that they've got to come. On top of that, they got arrows and rocks to throw down. Again, the detail. Joseph just came up with that. He had to come up with it because he's writing 10 pages a day. He doesn't have time to, what were wars like back then? He didn't know they had wars back then. Most people at that time thought that the American Indians were fairly benign. They didn't know. But, okay, we keep on moving. They erected towers that overlooked the works on top of the pickets, which were the wood fences on top of the berm. So they had trench, berm against the wall, another wall on top of that, and then pickets, which is the place you can stand and look out and see what's going on top of that. So you're talking 40, 45 feet high, very high, and the advantage was they can see everything that's going on and guide the armies to what they have to be done. They built places of security on these towers, so they could throw their stones and shoot their arrows at the Lamanites and could not be harmed. That's in chapter 50, verse 4 and 5. So a lot of thoughts going into what they're going to do when the Lamanites come, and they know the Lamanites are going to come. Well, that's just kind of the play of the land there. Now, the last one is just interesting to me. Captain Moroni was willing to, so hard times are coming. The Lamanites are here. They're battling us. He had no compunction against giving his women and children weapons so they could defend these towns. Now, this is one example of many, going back to what the policies are, what the strategies are, and the tactics to make the strategies work. Both Lamanite and Nephite had them. A lot of detail. In the old days, when I would read the Book of Mormon, I got to the war chapters. Okay, it's the war chapters, and I kind of plowed through. But the last time I went through, I went slowly, and I took out, what about this? And what about this? And just made a list of the different, as it boils out, policies, strategies, and tactics. And what I found was great detail that I don't believe Joseph could have come up with. Now, you can buy that or not. This is not a proof. This is not, see, Joseph didn't write the Book of Mormon. He translated it. But it's interesting. Over 100 different evidences in those chapters, 45 to 62, that show a lot of thought went into war. It was a big deal. War was a big deal. How do we going to deal with it in different ways? When they attack our towns, how do we protect our towns? Great detail to that end. Could Joseph have known that? Now, I will say, well, yeah, the mound builders are out there. He's not talking about mound builders. Mound builders made mounds of dirt. This is a wall with dirt and a trench, pickets on top of that, tower on top of that, throwing rocks and arrows down at them, protecting the entrance with the best men. Women and children would stand up there and throw the rocks as much as anyone else. A lot of detail. Okay, that's really what I wanted to accomplish. I hope you enjoyed that. And go back and read 45 to 62. Lots and lots of detail that Joseph, in my opinion, could not have come up with. It had to be divine, talking about the time when the Lamanites and the Nephites really did battle against one another. Thank you so much.